Welcome to the Reconcilence Review Show. It's the first week of December and the feeling of Christmas is in the air. This is my absolute favorite time in the year, and I know it is for several others as well. Now this month we'll be reviewing 4 of the classic Rankin Bass Christmas specials. We'll start this week off with the one that started it all, 1964's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, starring Burl Ives as Sam the Snowman, Billy Mae Richards as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Paul Soles as Hermie the Elf, Larry Mann as Yukon Cornelius and Bumble the Abominable Snowman, Stan Francis as Santa Claus and King Moonracer, Alfie Scoop as Fireball, Charlie in the Box, and various male elves, Janice Ornstein as Clarice, Paul Klingman as Donner and Coach Comet, Carl Banas as the head elf, the Spotted Elephant, and various misfit toys, Corinne Conley as Mrs. Donner and Dolly for Sue, Peg Dixon as Mama Claus, and Bernard Cowan as Clarice's father. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into our review of 1964's classic Rankin Bass Christmas special, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. We begin with a black and white scene showing newspaper headlines about the effects of a terrible winter storm that came through during an unspecified year, likely sometime between 1960 and 1962. We then cut to the Rankin Bass title card and are introduced to our narrator, Sam the Snowman, who recounts the effects of that particular storm a few years before and how Santa's trusty reindeer, Rudolph, helped them make it through that debacle. He sings the first few lines of the famous song, which flows into a musical overture containing instrumental snippets of the songs in the film. He then proceeds to tell the story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer all the way from the point of his birth a few years before said storm. We begin with a newborn Rudolph with his parents, as it's revealed that he possesses a shiny red nose that glows very brightly. Something his mother doesn't see as a big deal, but his father Donner takes a major issue with. Santa arrives to meet the newest member of his reindeer family and has a similar reaction to Rudolph's deformity, saying that hopefully it will disappear as he ages and the time comes for him to try out for the sleigh team. Santa proceeds to sing the song, Jingle, 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 to Rudolph, describing who he is and what he does. We then cut to a year later and are informed by Sam that Rudolph's parents have been able to hide his affliction thus far, before transitioning to the next scene that takes place in the elf's workshop. We're introduced to Hermie the Elf, who is on the toy assembly line with the other elves, as he's singled out and berated by his boss in front of everyone for doing a less than stellar job at assembling the toys. Break time comes for the staff, except for Hermie, who is forced to stay back by his boss as he berates him even more. Hermie tells him that he has no interest in making toys at all and instead wants to be a dentist. This is met by utter disregard by his boss, who threatens to fire him if he doesn't shape up. Now tell me why when I hear this guy's voice, all I can see is an overbearing, underqualified supervisor yelling at his employees in their cubicles. Christ, his voice is so grating I can't take it. I swear I remember I had an old elementary school teacher that sounds like him. But I digress. We cut back to Rudolph's house, where Donner forces him to wear black chalk on his nose to cover up the glowing red light, much to Rudolph's protest, and Donner is really mean about it. What's with the authority figures being such assholes in this? They have no sympathy for the younger characters who seem to be burdened with specific issues. Even Sam the Snowman as Santa seem passive at best to all of this. We're informed by Sam that some time has passed and Christmas has come and gone, and we pick back up in April, where all the young reindeer gather with their parents to meet one another, as well as be inspected by Santa. Rudolph meets a reindeer named Fireball who invites him to the reindeer games with the other fawns, as we cut to the music room where the elf choir is performing a rendition of the song We Are Santa's Elves, which Mrs. Claus enjoys, but Santa is completely unamused by. The choir director, who is the same boss from earlier, scolds them for their underwhelming performance, and they automatically blame Hermie, who failed to show up. No one's got Hermie's back at all. Man, quick to blame their shortcomings on the poor guy. It's an elf-eat-elf world, I suppose. The boss finds Hermie back at the assembly line and scolds him once again, this time for both missing the performance and for attempting to add teeth to one of the dolls. That's the last straw for Hermie, and he sneaks out of the window and runs away from home. We then cut back to the reindeer games, where Rudolph meets a young doe named Clarice, who immediately takes a liking to him. This makes him ecstatic, and he takes off flying through the air, which impresses everyone, including Santa. But things take a disastrous turn as the chalk that was covering his nose fades away and the bright red nose is exposed. Everyone ridicules him. Even Santa tells Donner that he should be ashamed for raising a son with such a deformity. So much for jolly old Saint Nick. Rudolph runs away, but Clarice follows behind, comforting him with the assurances that nothing is wrong with him and that his nose makes him special and isn't a deformity. This leads to my favorite song, not just from this film, but in all of the Rankin Bass Christmas specials, There's Always Tomorrow, performed by Clarice. I love this song. I always have since I was a small child. Something about Janice Ornstein's voice is so serene and soothing, and the melody and vocals together create a feeling of a warm blanket of comfort being gently draped over your shoulders. One of my absolute favorite parts of the film. Clarice's father shows up and scolds her, telling her to go home and stay far away from Rudolph. A few moments later, Hermie shows up, and he and Rudolph bond over the fact that they're both considered outcasts of their respective societies. They sing about their plight in the song We're a Couple of Misfits, which is an average song at best, nothing too special there. The two of them become traveling companions, and they eventually end up in the middle of a snowstorm, where Bumble the abominable snowman takes notice of their presence due to Rudolph's bright red nose. Hermie helps him cover it up, and they manage to escape the clutches of Bumble for the time being. The next morning, they run into a fellow by the name of Yukon Cornelius, who seems to be mining for silver and gold, I guess. We briefly cut to Sam the Snowman, who performs the song Silver and Gold, which is another classic song from the film's soundtrack. Yukon then offers to give Rudolph and Hermie a lift to their destination, but are interrupted by Bumble once again, who had apparently been trailing them through the night. Yukon manages to help them all escape by separating their portion of the ice with his pick, which sent them drifting away from Bumble with no destination in sight. We then cut back to Rudolph's home, where we see Donner distraught over the way he treated his son as he sets out to look for him. A few moments after his departure, Rudolph's mother and Clarice decided to form their own search party and head out as well. Elsewhere, Rudolph and friends finally reach land once again, as it seems they've arrived at a place inhabited by several toys, which inform them through song that they've arrived at the island of misfit toys, and then proceed to greet them with a rendition of the song, The Most Wonderful Day of the Year, which is just a delightful little tune if I've ever heard one before. Rudolph and friends inform the toys that they are also misfits and would like to stay and live there as well. The toys inform them that they have to get permission from their leader, King Moonracer, in order to do so. So they approach the king, who is a lion with black wings, and state their proposal, which is immediately rejected. King Moonracer tells them to please go back to Santa and let him know about their island sanctuary, in hopes that he can help find homes for some of the misfit toys. Rudolph agrees to this, and Moonracer allows them to stay the night before they head back home in the morning. Feeling that trouble follows him wherever he goes due to his red nose, Rudolph waits until everyone is asleep and decides to head out on his own. He says his silent goodbyes to Hermie and Yukon, wishing them the best in their individual endeavors. Quite some time passes, and after living out in the middle of nowhere, surviving the best he could, Rudolph grows into an adult, and just like Simba in The Lion King, realizes that he must return home to face his problems. Once he arrives, he's once again ridiculed by his fellow reindeer, but he shakes it off and heads home. He arrives to find only Santa, who informs him that his parents and Clarice have been missing for months if they've been out looking for him this entire time. As he sets out to look for them, a snowstorm comes hurtling through. The worst snowstorm in recent history, in fact. He makes his way to the home of the abominable snowman, where he finds him about to devour Clarice as his parents watch helplessly. He confronts Bumble, and we briefly cut to Hermie and Yukon, who have been searching for Rudolph this entire time as well. They come across Bumble's lair, where we see Rudolph coming to, surrounded by his parents and Clarice after being knocked the fuck out by Bumble. So Hermie pulls out all of his teeth with his dental pliers, and Yukon rushes him, with the two of them going over the cliff to their presumed deaths. They mourn the loss of their friend, who fearlessly sacrificed himself to save them, and they report back to Santa. They inform Santa about the island of misfit toys, as they promised King Moonracer they would, and he promises to find homes for all of them. Just then, there's a knock at the door, and it's revealed to be Yukon, who survived the previous ordeal, and he brought along Bumble with him, who is now reformed and wants a job working at the North Pole with Santa and the elves. It's Christmas Eve, and the storm has gotten so bad that Santa declares that he has no choice but to cancel Christmas, as he and the reindeer can't navigate through the heavy snowfall. He then realizes that Rudolph could be the solution to their problem. He asks Rudolph to guide his sleigh through the storm with his red nose, to which he agrees. Everyone erupts into a cheerful rendition of my second favorite song from the film, Holly Jolly Christmas, performed by Burl Ives. Seriously, this song is so catchy you will never ever forget it once you hear it for the first time. Santa and the reindeer head out on their route, and their first stop is the island of misfit toys. They load them up in their cargo, and as the credits play, we see Santa delivering them as well as other presents as the classic title song, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, plays. End scene. The end. What can I say? This film is a holiday classic. I know that several people, myself included, grew up with this heartwarming Christmas tale and hold it very near and dear to their hearts, returning to it every holiday season, time and time again. Great story, great acting, and an excellent soundtrack. This will always be highly revered as a timeless Christmas classic. If you haven't seen it before, I highly recommend that you check it out. It's absolutely worth the time. I'd like to take this time to thank my editor for all his hard work. I wouldn't be able to do these videos without you, so thank you. And to thank you all for your time as well. I sincerely appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed this review, and I hope you all are enjoying the winter weather and December in general. Join me next week as we review our next Rankin Bass Christmas special, Frosty the Snowman. Until then, everyone, be safe, take care of yourself and each other. Goodbye.